welcome to your Bachelorette recap. I'm Elena.
I'm Amanda.
And today we're recapping week 7 of The Bachelorette.
First up on the hometowns is Eric.
Rachel meets him in his town of Baltimore, Maryland, and they kind of meet on the nicer side, and then he's like, okay, now that you've seen this, I'm going to take you to my neighborhood.
Yes, and on the way he makes sure to point out the drug deal going down on the corner.
Right.
Because, you know, that's the norm that he was used to growing up with, I guess, which is sad. But, yeah, so they go to the courts where he used to play basketball growing up. He spent a lot of time there.
And while they're playing a little basketball, his friend Ralph shows up and kind of talks with him and Rachel. And Ralph can really tell that they have a connection and he really likes Rachel. And they talk a little bit about how Eric's never brought a girl home. And after that, they just kind of jump to them showing up at Eric's aunt's house.
And she's a little nervous about going in, but he gives her a little pep talk, and then they go in, and the family is really friendly, super nice.
Really inviting.
Yeah.
They go right into, you know, having their little private conversations, and it first shows Rachel and Eric's aunt. She asks her about how she's the first African-American bachelorette and how she's dealing with that, and you know, she's like, well, you know, it is hard because she's being judged by everybody, and she feels a lot of pressure with that.
She also asked his aunt if she thought that Eric was ready for love and marriage, and
she said definitely.
Yeah, I mean, they can see that he really likes this girl.
Yeah. Then shows Eric and his mom talking, and they're talking a little bit about the past.
Basically, she was giving tough love so that he could grow up to be a strong, independent man, basically. Because all of his other male relatives kind of took a different path.
It then shows Rachel and Eric's mom talking. So his mom was curious and was like, so what do you like about Eric?
And Rachel said that, you know, he really challenges me and I really love that about him.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
Goes back to Eric and his dad. His dad ended up apologizing for Eric's upbringing and about what he had to go through, and you know, Eric's like, I appreciate that. There was a lot of positivity on this hometown, and not a lot of conflict at all, so it was a pretty good one for her. After meeting the family, she has to leave, so they're talking a little bit, and Eric says, I'm falling in love with you. He said, you know, meaning I really care for you. And he kind of, you know, just explaining the feeling he has for her and how much he cares about her. But she kind of took it as he's not in love with her, but he just really cares about her, which is not how I think he meant it. But she still, all in all, felt like it was a good hometown date.
After Eric, the next one is Brian. So they meet up in Brian's hometown of Miami, Florida. And, of course, they have their little makeout session before they go and sightsee. And they do a lot of kissing.
They did a lot of making out.
They did a lot of making out.
And they went to like a domino park and they played dominoes with these one people.
They lost.
And right before they went to go meet his family, Brian was again kind of warning Rachel, like, this is how my mom is. You know, just kind of warn you about my family. And then it's off to Brian's family's house. So walking in, they were really like excited to see him. I don't know that they were necessarily really excited to see Rachel,
They
but
were friendly.
they were friendly. But you could see on his mom's face that, you know, she was kind of like maybe uncomfortable with the situation, or just kind of like, that's my baby, kind of protective.
That's how
like
she was. So then it cuts to Brian and his mom having a conversation about Rachel, and he's saying how she's the one, and his mom is kind of like taken aback by it, and she's just like, you know, and he's like, it's meant to be, she's perfect. Perfect. But that she's the one, and his mom was like, well, you've dated a lot of girls, and you've been with a lot of girls. She just kept saying, you know, you've dated a lot, and like, how do you know? And he's just like,
I just know.
So I don't know if Mama is ready for him to meet the one. But
it then shows Rachel talking with a female relative of Brian's, and they kind of got into his ex a little bit, and the relative explained like, well, no, she didn't get along with Brian's mom. However, she was really like, I want Brian all to myself. So it was kind of that situation, and Rachel's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not like that, so that shouldn't be a problem, but I still want his mom to like me. And then goes right into her talking to Brian's mother, and his mom's being a little, you know, protective, and she's like, so,
you know, when you marry him, you're marrying the family,
yeah,
not just him.
and kind of alluding to,
Don't get in between Mama and
Right.
her baby bear.
or I'll kill you.
Yeah.
And they kind of laugh it off. But Brian's mom seems to like Rachel and said, you know what, I'd be happy if you guys got married, so all is good in that household, surprisingly.
Yeah, it went pretty well.
After that, Rachel had to leave to go to the next hometown, and Brian was talking to her, and he said, I am in love with you. She said she was like really happy to hear that. Practically a perfect ending to the hometown.
Next hometown is Peter.
They met in Peter's hometown of Madison, Wisconsin.
They walked around in like a farmer's market type of thing.
Right, just kind of like walking around town, very casual. They stop into this restaurant, and Peter's kind of like, oh, I invited a couple friends, you know, to meet, and turns out to be 4. And she's like, oh, okay, so they're all, you know, squishing into this booth, and they're all talking about, oh, how silly Peter is, and Rachel's like, oh, really? Because he doesn't really seem that way. He's kind of guarded around me, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, the walls will go down.
Yeah.
Peter brings aside 2 of the guy friends and just kind of like sits off and starts talking to them a little bit, and they really like Rachel already, but Peter's like, you know, I just don't feel like I'm ready to propose. I don't think like that I'm going to in a couple weeks, like that's
What
too
are you
scary.
doing?
Yeah, and the friends are basically like, well, just don't freak out about it. You know, if she's the one, then it'll be fine. And they like her, so don't mess it up, basically.
Literally, they said.
Yeah.
After meeting the friends, they go straight to Peter's parents' house, and they met the family. And his family seemed really open and just a loving family. Super sweet. His little niece was really cute.
Yeah, he was interacting with her a lot, and Rachel was like, oh, I thought that was really sweet, and he'd be a good father someday, so she found that really attractive. So first conversation is between Rachel and Peter's sister-in-law, and she just kind of asked, do you think Peter's ready to get married? And she's like, you know, I think he is. I think he's ready for that. However, he does have walls up, and that's apparent to everybody. And then quickly switches over to Peter and his mother, and he's just talking to her about, you know, how he has his guard up a little bit, fears of like proposing that soon, and she's like, well, I can see you guys do have a great chemistry, but Peter still has his doubts about the whole proposing thing in a few weeks.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, you
kind of need to be there in this situation.
Yeah, a little bit more so than what he is.
Yeah.
So then Rachel talks to Peter's mom, and Peter's mom wants to know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And she's like, married and children, and you know, she just wants
A family.
and she fears that Peter just isn't quite there.
Mm-hmm. So she's like, do you think
Yeah.
he's ready? And his mom basically says, I think Peter is ready for a commitment, but honestly, I don't think he's ready to propose.
He's not sure that he's going to get down on his knee at the end of this. He's still not sure yet.
Right, and she said it could be, you know, further down the road he maybe would, but she just doesn't think he's there yet. And Rachel's just kind of like, well, I wanted a husband at the end of this, not a boyfriend. So there's a little doubt in her mind now whether this will work out with Peter if he's not there.
Yeah, but by the end of the hometown, they're sitting on the stoop, and, you know, he's like, I'm really happy.
And he said, I'm sold after today, whatever that means.
I think she was wanting something a little more than just, I'm happy.
Yeah, she was looking for more of like, I'm falling in love with you, or I am in love with you, since the other two guys have already, you know, kind of professed their love, and he just really didn't do that. So
just kind of sent her on her way, and he was like, in the interview, he was like,
that might be the last time.
Yeah. He was like, you know, I'm just not there yet, and because I didn't say I love her or falling in love with her, this might be the last time that, you know, he sees her. And then they just go straight into Dean.
So Rachel meets up with Dean in his hometown of Aspen, Colorado, and they basically spend a little bit of their time like on four-wheelers, you know, because it's always fun between them. She even said like it's always a fun time, and she said he's her beautiful surprise out of this entire experience because it's always, you know, uplifting and fun with him. However, Dean is still kind of nervous about tonight, as we learned last week.
So nervous.
His family is just,
he hasn't seen his dad in 2 years. His family hasn't been in the same room together for 8 years.
So it's a little nerve-wracking for him.
Yeah, and he's told Rachel, he's like, I'm really nervous about today, but, you know, they have a great afternoon with each other, and then comes the point where they're walking up to go inside the house to meet the family, and he is freaking out. He's like, I'm not ready.
Right.
I'm not ready.
And since he was like obviously kind of in his head about it, Rachel was like, you know, maybe you should talk to your dad today because you haven't talked to him in so long. So maybe you could take that opportunity to kind of speak with him. But I just don't think they knew what they were walking into.
Yeah, she goes, have you ever told him that, you know, he wasn't there for you and, you know, you're upset about that? And she's like, he goes, no. And she goes, maybe this is the time to do it. I don't think it was the time to do it, but.
So they walk in, and even Dean looks like he wasn't sure what was going on. They're all sitting on the floor on pillows, and his dad is a bit eccentric. He has a very long beard. He's wearing like a turban and kind of like a dress like piece of clothing. And he even warned Rachel before the date that he kind of has this different lifestyle now that's fairly new, where they picked like new names for themselves, him and his new wife.
Yeah, his new name, I don't know how to pronounce it. I can't remember it exactly, but the meaning of it is like a beautiful man, or beautiful, something to the effect that he's beautiful. And Dean was like,
says a lot about him.
Yeah.
So they walk in and Dean's like, where's the table?
Yeah.
Why are you sitting on the floor? What's going on? And his dad's just like, we don't have a table. So they go ahead and sit down, and they're kind of talking a little bit.
You can see Dean is just really uncomfortable.
Visibly uncomfortable. So his dad was just talking a lot about like energies and stuff like that, and he even had like these feathers, because Dean's mom passed away, and she said something about like coming back as a feather, or that would be her like item or something. So he said, here's like feathers named after her, and I'm gonna play the gong over here, so you all lay down and I'll do that. It's kind of like a meditation type thing.
Rachel appreciated the feathers, the whole meaning behind it. She's like, that's really nice, that's cool. She dug it.
And she kind of went along with the whole like laying down, closing your eyes, listening to the gong, but Dean was not having it. He was like, what the hell is this?
What is this? I mean, it was kind of peaceful, like a meditation, but
he was definitely weirded out by it.
Yeah, Rachel was just going with it. She thought it was kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. His dad is actually the one that goes, hey Dean, can I have a couple moments alone with you? So everybody else leaves. His dad starts talking about how great Dean is, and how he's like, wow, I must have been a great dad because of how you turned out. And that kind of clicks in Dean, and he's like, maybe not. And he just starts saying, like, he starts like kind of questioning him, and he's like, do you feel like you were a good dad? Like, honestly, do you feel like you're still fulfilling, your fatherly duties? And just kind of like calling him out in a subtle way.
Yeah, he wasn't being disrespectful in any way.
Absolutely
I don't believe.
not. It was the most respectful way to call somebody out. Yeah. And his dad is just dodging every question. He's like, what are you saying, I don't love you or something? He's like, no, that's not it. He was just asking him questions that he wanted answered.
I just feel like he should answer these questions for him, but I don't know that this was necessarily
the right time.
The right time with cameras and everything, because it was very it was a private conversation.
Right.
And it wasn't very private.
And I think that if Rachel hadn't like pressed him to do so, maybe it wouldn't have happened. However, mid-conversation, kind of flips to Rachel talking to Dean's sister, and she's talking about how their dad wasn't there for them, how Dean is just a really strong person, she's not as strong as him, and Rachel's like, aw, and the sister actually starts like crying, and it's an emotional,
she really looks up to him. And
yeah, she admires him. So goes back to Dean and his dad, and Dean's kind of like getting angry at this point because his dad's not answering any questions, and he doesn't even see what's wrong when Dean was just trying to express his feelings towards how he wasn't there when his mom died.
Yeah, and his dad, Dean was like, why are you so angry? He goes, I'm angry because your mom died. And Dean was like, well, everybody was mad that she died. He goes, but that's when we all should have got together and unified and been a family and there for each other. But instead, everybody kind of went their own way. And he was 15 at the time, and he's like, that was a really impressionable time in my life, and
he really needed his dad.
Yeah.
So his dad just ends up getting so angry and starts to get up to walk out, and Dean's like, I still love you.
Regardless of
Yeah.
everything.
And I feel like that takes like a really strong person, and his dad just literally walks out. Like, he's done. It shows a little later, Rachel approaches Dean's dad and she's like, "Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" And he said, "If you must," which is incredibly rude.
He was done at this point, and he even said he was done.
So she's just like, "Me and Dean have a connection, and
He's important to me.
Right.
I wanted to meet you and the family."
He was just like, "That's great and all, but, and if you guys get engaged, you can come back, but right now I'm done." That was basically the whole conversation.
Yeah. I think he had even said that he was starting to say he regretted having everybody over, but it, like, cut him off. He cut himself off. He was like, "I regret having," and then he's just like, "I'm done," He gives her his blessing and is like, if you guys get married or you're together, you can come back and I'll get to know you that way. And
Yeah.
So
Rachel goes inside after this, and Dean's just kind of laying on the floor because there's nowhere to sit. And Rachel's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "No, not really." And he's just like completely open at this point and vulnerable, and he's just like, it's really upsetting. And he says to her, like, "I'm falling in love with you." This was like an important day, so he just wanted everything to go well, and it just wasn't. And she actually says back to him, "I'm falling in love with you too," which that's the first guy she has said that to. So after that, it's time for the rose ceremony.
yeah, it goes straight to Texas, her hometown, for
Yeah.
the rose ceremony.
And Chris Harrison walks in, and they basically recap together all the hometowns to kind of organize her thoughts to see where she should go with this decision.
She's having a hard time. She didn't think that she would be this
Involved.
with all four of them.
Right, and have such a strong connection. So she said this one was like definitely the hardest she's had to go through thus far. But it's time to make a decision now. So to the rose ceremony, Brian gets the first rose, and then Eric gets the second rose. So then it's down to Peter and Dean, and
Drum roll.
and the last rose goes to Peter.
We thought maybe he might be going home.
Because he's not ready to be engaged whatsoever.
Yeah, he says, "I'm not ready," but yet she wants to keep him. And Dean is ready, but she's like, "No, I don't think he's ready."
So basically, she told a guy that she's falling in love with him and made him go through a really, like, almost traumatic experience with his family just to send him home.
Yeah, she thought that he was saying that only because it was a very emotional time, and maybe he's not really feeling those. Maybe he thinks he is. But why say it back?
Yeah, I think that it was really cruel to say that to someone and then immediately send them home. I think that was a wrong decision.
And I mean, maybe she's confused. Maybe because there's falling in love and then just loving a person, caring for a person. And if that's what she felt for him, that's different. And maybe she could have expressed that to him instead.
So this episode was a bit disappointing. I'm really sorry that Dean had to go through all that just to get sent home.
Yeah. He was very respectful, though.
Yeah.
When he was leaving.
He was still like, "I think she's an amazing person. I really hope she finds, what she's looking for."
In the limo, he was just like, "I said it and I meant it. And she said it, and I guess the feeling wasn't mutual."
Yeah. The whole situation was messed up. But
Sad.
we are now down to 3 guys, Brian, Eric, and Peter. And next week, they are meeting her family, and they don't seem to be going easy on any of the guys at all. So it's going to be a rough episode, I'm sure.
Yeah. The clip that they show with Brian, one of the family members, they don't look too happy. So I'm curious. And you know they edit and they clip things together, so I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Do they really have a problem with Brian? We'll find out next week.
So if you like this recap, give it a like and comment down below if you were shocked that Dean was sent home this week.
And tell us who out of the 3 you think is going to be the last one standing, or the last 2. Who do you think's going home? Because I did not think.
I thought Peter was going home this week.
I have him going all the way, but after what we saw, I don't know.
Oh no.
Anyways, subscribe, come back, and visit us. Bachelor in Paradise comes on soon.
Yes.
We will have videos for that.
Yep. So we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.